The Draknari Empire believed humans were fragile. They believed pain would break us and death would silence us. But when Sergeant Maria Santos fell to their weapons, 40 minutes later she opened her eyes. What they thought was weakness became their greatest fear, the Marine who would not stay down. The capture. The stars looked different through alien metal. Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her face against the cold barrier of her cell, watching distant suns drift past like scattered diamonds on black velvet. 3 days ago, she had been leading a reconnaissance patrol on the edge of human space. Now she was somewhere beyond the reach of any rescue, aboard a ship that defied every law of physics she had learned in basic training. The Draknari Empire had found humanity. Maria flexed her wrists against the energy restraints that held her arms behind her back. The bindings hummed with a low frequency that made her bones ache, but she had endured worse during survival training. What bothered her more was the silence. No interrogation, no demands, just the steady thrum of alien engines carrying her deeper into unknown space. The cell door dissolved without warning, revealing 3 figures that stepped through the opening like nightmares given form. The Draknari stood nearly 8 feet tall, their obsidian skin reflecting the corridor lights and patterns that hurt to follow. Their faces were angular, predatory, with eyes that glowed like embers in a dying fire. Each wore armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, adapting to their movements with unnatural grace. The largest of them spoke in perfect English, its voice carrying harmonics that made Maria's teeth ache. "I am Interrogator Prime Varkan. You will provide information about your species' military capabilities, population centers, and defensive installations." Maria looked up at the towering alien and smiled. "Nice to meet you too, big guy. I'm Sergeant Santos, United States Marine Corps. My serial number is..." The interrogator's hand moved faster than her eye could follow. Pain exploded across her jaw, sending her sprawling against the cell wall. Stars danced in her vision, but she kept the smile fixed on her face as she spat blood onto the pristine floor. "Your primitive codes of conduct have no meaning here," Varkan said. "We have conquered 17 species across 43 star systems. Each believed themselves unique, special, destined for greatness. All submitted to the Empire's will." Maria struggled back to her feet, the energy restraints making every movement an effort. 17 species? That's cute. You should visit Earth sometime. We've been conquering ourselves for thousands of years and we're still not done. The second Draknari, smaller and more delicate than the interrogator, stepped forward. Its armor bore different markings, scientific rather than military. When it spoke, its voice carried less menace but more curiosity. "I am Dr. Vex of the Imperial Research Division. Your species intrigues us. Most primitives cower when faced with the Empire's might. You display defiance." "Defiance is one word for it," Maria said. "Back home, we just call it Tuesday." Varkan's eyes flared brighter. "Your humor will not protect you from what comes next. The Empire has methods that break minds as easily as bones. You will speak, or you will cease to exist." They dragged her from the cell through corridors that stretched impossibly far in every direction. The ship was vast beyond comprehension, a floating city of alien technology and cold purpose. Draknari crew members paused in their duties to watch her pass, their ember eyes following her with predatory interest. Maria memorized every detail she could, filing away information about guard rotations, weapon placements, and the rhythm of the ship's operations. The interrogation chamber occupied the heart of the vessel, a spherical room lined with devices that hummed with malevolent energy. At its center stood a chair that looked more like a surgical table, surrounded by instruments that belonged in a nightmare. Dr. Vex moved among them with practiced efficiency, adjusting settings and calibrating readings on displays that showed incomprehensible alien script. "The neural disruptor," Dr. Vex explained as they strapped Maria to the chair, "directly stimulates the pain centers of your brain while keeping you conscious. Most subjects provide full cooperation within minutes. The strongest last perhaps an hour before their minds shatter completely." Maria tested the restraints and found them immovable. "Most subjects probably weren't Marines. We're a stubborn bunch." Varkan loomed over her, its face a mask of controlled violence. "Your warriors mean nothing. We have faced species with natural armor, with multiple hearts, with regenerative abilities that surpass your medical science. All fell before the Empire's might." "But you haven't faced humans," Maria said, "and that's where you made your first mistake." The interrogator's laugh was like grinding stone. "Enlighten me. What makes your species so special?" Maria looked him straight in the eyes. "We don't know when to quit." The first pulse from the neural disruptor felt like lightning made of razor blades running through her nervous system. Every nerve ending screamed in unison, sending waves of agony that threatened to tear her consciousness apart. Maria clenched her teeth and rode the wave, focusing on the memory of her drill instructor's voice from years ago. Pain is just weakness leaving the body, Marine. When the pulse ended, she was still conscious, still defiant. That all you got? Dr. Vex's frills expanded in what might have been surprise. Remarkable. Most subjects are already pleading by now. Increase the intensity to level 7. The second pulse nearly broke her. Maria felt her vision go white as every muscle in her body contracted involuntarily. She tasted copper and realized she had bitten through her tongue. But when the agony faded, she was still there, still breathing, still human. Serial number 2847-6639-1142, she gasped out. That's all you get. Varkan's eyes blazed with frustration. Level 10. Sir, Dr. Vex interjected. Level 10 is potentially fatal to most species. Then we will learn if humans are as resilient as she claims. The third pulse shattered Maria's world. Every atom in her body seemed to vibrate with pure agony, tearing at the bonds that held her consciousness together. She felt her heart stutter, felt her brain beginning to shut down under the assault. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision, and she welcomed it as an old friend. Her last coherent thought was of her sister back on Earth, probably worried sick about her missing patrol. She hoped someone would tell her family that she had died well, that she had given the aliens nothing useful, that she had been a Marine until the very end. The medical readouts flatlined. Her heart stopped. Her brain activity ceased. Sergeant Maria Santos, United States Marine Corps, was officially dead. Dr. Vex studied the readings with scientific detachment. Fascinating. Her neural pathways remained active 3 seconds longer than our projections indicated. The human brain appears more resilient than estimated. Varkan turned away in disgust. Dispose of the body. We will capture more humans and break them properly. This one was clearly defective. Neither of them noticed the faint smile that remained frozen on Maria's lips, or the way her fingers had managed to work loose one small component from the chair's restraint system. In 40 minutes, they would learn that humans were indeed different from every other species they had conquered. They just didn't understand how different yet. The impossible return. The morgue of a Draknari warship was not designed for comfort. Bodies lay on crystalline slabs that hummed with preservation fields, keeping organic matter stable until disposal procedures could be completed. The air recyclers worked overtime to maintain sterile conditions, filling the chamber with the antiseptic smell of alien technology. Maria Santos had been dead for exactly 39 minutes and 47 seconds when she opened her eyes. The two morgue attendants, junior technicians barely out of training, froze like statues when they heard the soft intake of breath. They had been preparing her body for the waste processors, standard procedure for deceased test subjects. The scanner readings showed no life signs, no neural activity, no cardiac function. Yet the human female was blinking slowly, as if waking from a peaceful nap. By the 7 moons, whispered the first technician, dropping his scanning device. It clattered against the floor with a sound like breaking glass. Maria sat up slowly, her muscles protesting after 40 minutes of complete stillness. She looked around the morgue with mild curiosity, taking in the alien architecture and the terrified expressions of her observers. "Morning, boys. Anyone got some coffee? I feel like I could sleep for a week." The second technician fumbled for his communicator, hands shaking as he tried to activate the emergency frequency. "Command, this is Morgue Station 7. We have a situation. The human subject is... She's what, technician?" came the sharp reply from the bridge. "She's alive, sir." The silence that followed lasted long enough for Maria to swing her legs off the slab and stand. Her body felt strange, like a machine that had been powered down and restarted. Everything worked, but there was a moment of disconnect, as if her consciousness had needed time to reconnect with her physical form. "That's impossible," the voice from the communicator finally said. Dr. Vex confirmed termination, brain death, cardiac arrest, complete cellular shutdown. Maria stretched, working the stiffness out of her joints. "Yeah, that sounds about right. Pretty sure I died there for a bit. Not my favorite experience, but I've had worse hangovers." The first technician backed against the wall, his frills flattened against his neck in obvious terror. In his species mythology, the dead who returned were harbingers of cosmic disaster. To see it happening in reality shattered something fundamental in his worldview. Within minutes, the morgue filled with security personnel. Dr. Vex arrived shortly after, scanner in hand, his scientific mind racing to process what his instruments were telling him. The readings were clear and consistent. The human female showed all normal signs of life. Heart rate slightly elevated but steady. Brain activity normal. No trace of the neural damage that should have been irreversible. Impossible, Dr. Vex muttered, running the scanner over Maria's body for the third time. The neural disruptor delivers focused electromagnetic pulses that permanently disrupt synaptic connections. No known species can recover from level 10 exposure, Maria shrugged. Guess I'm special that way. So, are we going to stand around all day, or are you going to try to kill me again? I've got nowhere else to be. Varkan arrived with a squad of elite guards, their weapons trained on Maria despite her obvious lack of threat. The interrogator Prime's eyes burned brighter than usual, betraying his confusion and growing anger. Explain this, he demanded of Dr. Vex. I cannot, the scientist admitted. By every law of biology I understand she should be permanently dead. Her neural pathways were completely severed. Her heart stopped for over 30 minutes. Yet here she stands, apparently unharmed. Some kind of technology, Varkan decided. Hidden implants, nanomachines, genetic modification. Scan her again. Dr. Vex had already thought of that. The deep scans revealed nothing abnormal, no artificial enhancements, no foreign technology. Maria Santos appeared to be exactly what she claimed, an unmodified human female with standard Earth physiology. The only unusual readings were trace amounts of an unknown energy signature that faded even as he watched. There's something else, Dr. Vex said quietly. The morgue surveillance recorded everything. She was clinically dead for the entire duration, no vital signs, no cellular activity. Then, between frames 39:47 and 39:48, she simply resumed living. Maria listened to their discussion with interest. She had no more understanding of what had happened than they did, but she was not about to share that information. Let them think humanity possessed some miraculous technology or genetic advantage. Fear was a weapon, and she intended to use it. Must be Tuesday, she said cheerfully. I always feel more alive on Tuesdays. The guards escorted her back to a cell, but not the same one as before. This one was deeper in the ship, surrounded by additional security measures and monitoring equipment. They clearly intended to watch her more carefully this time. Maria settled onto the narrow bench and studied her new accommodations with professional interest. The cell's walls were transparent aluminum, allowing constant observation from the corridor. Sensors tracked her every movement, every breath, every heartbeat. Emergency response teams were stationed at regular intervals, ready to react to any disturbance. The Draknari were taking no chances with their impossible prisoner. Dr. Vex arrived an hour later, carrying a portable laboratory worth of scanning equipment. I need to understand what happened, he said without preamble. Your physiology defies every principle of xenobiology. Species do not simply return from brain death. Maybe your principles need updating, Maria suggested. Humans have a habit of doing impossible things. It's kind of our specialty. No, Dr. Vex said firmly. There must be a rational explanation, some mechanism we have not detected. Will you submit to additional testing? Maria pretended to consider the request. What's in it for me? Knowledge, the scientist replied. Understanding of your own capabilities, perhaps answers to questions you did not know you had. That was actually tempting. Maria was as curious as anyone about what had happened to her. One moment she had been dying in agony, the next she was waking up in an alien morgue. But she could not appear too eager, could not let them think she was cooperating willingly. Tell you what, Doc, she said, I'll make you a deal. You answer some of my questions and I'll answer some of yours. Fair trade. Dr. Vex's frills rippled with interest. What do you wish to know? This empire of yours. How many ships? How many worlds? How long have you been conquering your neighbors? That information is classified. Maria leaned back against the wall. Then I guess we don't have a deal. Thanks for stopping by, though. The conversation was enlightening. The scientist studied her for a long moment. She could see him weighing his scientific curiosity against military security protocols. Curiosity won, as she had hoped it would. The Empire spans 43 star systems, he said carefully. Our fleet numbers in the thousands of vessels. We have been expanding for over 3 centuries, bringing order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds. And now you've found Earth, Maria said. How's that working out for you so far? Dr. Vex did not answer, but his expression suggested the answer was not well. The discovery of humanity had already proven more complicated than anticipated. One impossible human prisoner was forcing them to question assumptions they had held for generations. Your turn, he said. How did you return from death? Maria smiled. I have absolutely no idea. It was the truth, but Dr. Vex clearly did not believe her. He spent the next hour running scans, taking samples, and documenting readings that made no sense according to his understanding of biology. Every test confirmed what they already knew. Maria Santos was an ordinary human who had done something extraordinary. As the scientist packed up his equipment, Maria decided to plant one more seed of doubt. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said conversationally. "I'm not even special. Back on Earth, there are billions more just like me. Marines, soldiers, civilians, all of them just as stubborn, just as hard to kill." Dr. Vex paused in his packing. "You claim this ability is common among your species?" "I claim humans are tougher than we look," Maria replied. "And we really don't like being told what to do." The scientist left without another word, but Maria could see the uncertainty in his movement. She had given him something to think about, something that would gnaw at his scientific mind and spread to others. The seed of doubt was planted. Now she just had to help it grow. The science of stubbornness. Dr. Vex had not slept in 3 cycles. His laboratory, normally a model of organized efficiency, now resembled a disaster zone. Datapads lay scattered across every surface, holographic displays flickered with incomprehensible readings, and the air recyclers worked overtime to clear the ozone smell of overheated equipment. The human female had broken his understanding of the universe. Every scan, every test, every analysis yielded the same impossible result. Maria Santos possessed no enhanced technology, no genetic modifications, no biological anomalies that could explain her return from clinical death. She was, by every measure his instruments could detect, an ordinary member of her species. Yet she had accomplished something that violated every principle of xenobiology he had studied for 40 years. "Computer, replay morgue surveillance, time frame 39 minutes 45 seconds to 39 minutes 50 seconds, he commanded. The holographic display materialized above his desk, showing the morgue chamber in perfect detail. Maria's body lay motionless on the crystalline slab, surrounded by the steady glow of preservation fields. Medical scanners confirmed complete cellular shutdown, 0 neural activity, no detectable life signs. At exactly 39 minutes and 47 seconds, something changed. Not in her body, but in the space around her. For a single frame, barely detectable even in slow motion, the air itself seemed to shimmer with an energy pattern his instruments could not identify. Then she simply opened her eyes and sat up, as casually as waking from afternoon rest. "Computer, analyze energy signature at timestamp 3947. Energy signature unknown. Pattern does not match any documented phenomenon in Imperial databases." Dr. Vex leaned back in his chair, frills drooping with exhaustion. 3 cycles of analysis had yielded nothing useful. The energy signature appeared for less than a second, carried no detectable source, and resembled nothing in the combined scientific knowledge of 43 conquered civilizations. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. The laboratory's main screen flickered to life, revealing the angular features of Commander Thorne, the ship's captain. His amber eyes glowed with the controlled anger that had made him legendary throughout the fleet. "Dr. Vex," Thorne said without preamble, "I require a status report on the human anomaly. High Command is asking questions I cannot answer." "The subject remains unique," Dr. Vex replied carefully. "My analysis suggests her resurrection was genuine, not the result of any technology we can detect." "That is unacceptable," Thorne snapped. "Species do not return from death. Find me a rational explanation, or I will find another scientist who can." The transmission ended, leaving Dr. Vex alone with his impossible data. He understood the commander's frustration. The Galactic Empire was built on order, predictability, the absolute certainty that their technology and understanding were superior to all others. A single human who defied those principles threatened the foundation of everything they believed. The laboratory door chimed, and Engineer Kala entered carrying a datapad and wearing an expression of nervous excitement. She was young for her rank, promoted ahead of schedule due to her exceptional understanding of energy systems. Her scales showed the deep blue coloration of her homeworld, a planet the Empire had conquered when she was barely out of childhood. "Dr. Vex," she said, approaching his desk with careful respect, "I have been monitoring the ship's energy grid as you requested. There have been fluctuations." "What kind of fluctuations?" Kala activated her datapad, projecting a 3-dimensional map of the ship's power distribution network. "Micro-surges throughout the detention level. They correspond exactly with the human's presence. When she moves, the fluctuations follow her." Dr. Vex studied the data with growing interest. The pattern was subtle, barely detectable above normal operational variance, but it was definitely there. Maria Santos was somehow affecting the ship's energy system simply by existing in proximity to them. "Have you detected similar patterns elsewhere in the ship?" he asked. "No, sir. The effect appears localized to approximately 50 meters around the subject. But doctor, there is something else. The fluctuations are increasing in intensity." Before Dr. Vex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the laboratory in pulsing red as the intercom crackled with urgent announcements. "All security teams to detention level 7. Priority 1 alert. All security teams to detention level 7. Dr. Vex and Kala raced through the corridors toward the detention area, dodging emergency response teams and confused crew members. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, and several junior officers pressed themselves against the walls as they passed, their eyes wide with barely controlled fear. They arrived at the detention level to find chaos. Security teams stood in rigid formation outside Maria's cell, weapons raised but trembling in their grip. The transparent aluminum walls of the cell flickered with strange patterns of light, as if some invisible energy was playing across their surface. Maria herself sat calmly on the narrow bench, apparently unaware of the commotion she was causing. When she noticed Dr. Vex approaching, she offered a cheerful wave. "Hey Doc, glad you could make it. Things were getting a little boring in here." Varkan materialized beside them, his massive frame radiating barely contained violence. "The human has been doing this for the past 10 minutes, he growled. "Every piece of equipment on this level is experiencing system failures. The guards are reporting hallucinations, nightmares while awake." Dr. Vex approached the cell cautiously, scanner in hand. The readings were extraordinary. Energy patterns he had never seen before swirled around Maria like invisible storms. The very air seemed charged with potential, waiting for some unknown trigger to release forces that defied comprehension. "Fascinating," he murmured, adjusting his scanner settings. "The energy signature is similar to what we detected during her resurrection, but amplified by several orders of magnitude." "Is she doing this deliberately?" Varkan demanded. Maria looked up from examining her fingernails. "Doing what? I'm just sitting here having a lovely conversation with myself about whether alien food processors can make decent pizza. Spoiler alert, the answer is probably no." "The reality distortions," Varkan snarled. "The equipment failures, the effect you are having on my crew." "Oh that," Maria said with genuine surprise. "Sorry, I had no idea. Is it bothering people? I can try to tone it down if you want." Dr. Vex nearly dropped his scanner. "You can control it?" "Control is a strong word. It's more like managing. You know how sometimes you get hiccups and you just have to ride them out? It's kind of like that, but with mysterious alien energy or whatever this is." The scientist's mind raced with implications. If Maria could influence the ship's systems unconsciously, what might she accomplish if she focused her attention deliberately? More importantly, if this ability was common among humans as she had suggested, what did that mean for the Empire's planned invasion of Earth? "Dr. Vex," Kala whispered urgently, pulling him aside. "The energy readings are off the scale. Whatever she is doing, it is affecting systems throughout the ship. Life support, navigation, weapons control. If this continues, how long until critical failure?" "At current rate of increase, perhaps 6 hours." Dr. Vex looked back at Maria, who had returned to her casual examination of the cell's furnishings. She appeared completely unaware that her mere presence was threatening the structural integrity of one of the Empire's most advanced warships. "Miss Santos," he called out, "I need to ask you something very important. Is this ability common among your species?" Maria tilted her head thoughtfully. "Define this ability. The not staying dead thing, or the apparently breaking your spaceship thing?" "Both." "Well, the first one is new to me too. Never died before yesterday, so I can't really speak to the normal human experience there. As for the second thing," she shrugged. "Humans have always been good at breaking things we don't understand. It's kind of our superpower." "But you claim all humans possess these capabilities?" Maria stood and walked to the front of the cell, bringing herself as close to Dr. Vex as the barrier would allow. Her expression grew serious for the first time since her resurrection. "Doctor, let me tell you something about humans. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. What we are is stubborn. When the universe tells us something is impossible, we take it as a personal challenge. When someone bigger and stronger tries to push us around, we push back twice as hard. And when we die," she smiled, but there was nothing gentle about it, "well, apparently we just get back up and keep fighting." The lights in the corridor flickered ominously. Several guards stepped backward involuntarily, their training warring with instincts that screamed danger. Dr. Vex felt his own frills flatten against his neck, an involuntary response to predators that his species had inherited from their primitive ancestors. So to answer your question, Maria continued, I have no idea if all humans can do what I can do. But I know this. If you invade our world, you are going to find out. And I really do not think you are going to like the answer. The ship shuddered slightly, as if something vast and invisible had just tested the limits of its structural integrity. In that moment, Dr. Vex realized that the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had discovered humanity believing they had found another primitive species to conquer. Instead, they had stumbled across something that might well destroy them all. Breaking the machine. The Draknari Empire prided itself on discipline. For 3 centuries, their military machine had operated with clockwork precision, conquering worlds through superior technology and unshakable morale. Their soldiers followed orders without question, their officers planned campaigns with mathematical certainty, and their crews maintained ships that ran like perfectly calibrated instruments. Maria Santos had been aboard for 6 days, and that perfect machine was starting to crack. It began with small things. A guard hesitating before opening her cell for daily inspection. A technician taking the long route to avoid passing her detention level. Conversations that stopped abruptly when someone mentioned the human prisoner who refused to stay dead. By the 3rd day, the whispers had spread throughout the ship. The undying human, the ghost marine, the creature that laughed at death itself. Each telling embellished the story, adding details that grew more fantastical with each retelling, until Maria had become something between legend and nightmare in the minds of the crew. Commander Thorne stood in his ready room, studying reports that made no tactical sense. Efficiency ratings down 12% ship-wide. Medical reporting increased stress symptoms among personnel. 3 separate requests for transfer to other vessels, all from veteran soldiers who had never shown signs of fear in combat. 1 human prisoner, he muttered to the empty room. 1 primitive alien female is compromising the discipline of my entire crew. The door chimed and Dr. Vex entered without waiting for permission. The scientist looked haggard, his usual composed demeanor replaced by obvious agitation. He carried a data pad clutched against his chest like a shield. Commander, we need to discuss the human situation. My analysis has revealed patterns that suggest— Your analysis has revealed nothing useful, Thorne interrupted. 6 days of testing, and you still cannot explain how she returned from confirmed death. Meanwhile, my ship is falling apart around us. Dr. Vex placed his datapad on the commander's desk, activating a holographic display. The energy fluctuations are increasing exponentially. More concerning, they appear to be evolving, becoming more complex and purposeful. I believe the human is learning to control whatever force allows her to resurrect. Then we kill her again, Thorne said simply. Keep killing her until she stops coming back. That may not be advisable, sir. Each death-resurrection cycle appears to strengthen the energy patterns. If she continues to grow more powerful, she is 1 individual against a crew of 8,000. Power or no power, she cannot threaten this ship. Dr. Vex manipulated the holographic display, showing energy distribution throughout the vessel. Red warning indicators clustered around the detention level like infection markers on a medical scan. She is not trying to threaten the ship, Commander. She is simply existing. The threat comes from what her existence represents to our understanding of the universe. Explain. The Empire is built on certainty. We conquer because we know we are superior. Our crews follow orders because they believe in our invincibility. But this human has shown them something impossible, something that challenges the very foundations of that belief. Fear is spreading, not of her specifically, but of what she represents. The unknown, the uncontrollable. Thorne studied the display with growing unease. He had commanded ships in battles across a dozen star systems, faced enemy fleets that outnumbered his forces 3-1, and never felt the cold touch of doubt that was creeping into his thoughts now. 1 human prisoner should not have been capable of undermining 40 years of military discipline. What do you recommend? Isolation protocols, complete information blackout. No one talks about the human, no one speculates about her abilities, no one spreads rumors about resurrection or supernatural powers. And if she dies again? Dr. Vex hesitated. Then we do not report it. We classify the entire incident and pretend it never happened. It was a reasonable plan. It might even have worked if Maria had been content to remain a passive subject of study. But Marines were not trained for passivity, and Maria had spent 6 days learning the rhythms of her captors. She chose the moment carefully. The ship's duty rotation placed the most inexperienced guards on detention level during the night shift, when senior officers were less likely to be monitoring activities closely. The corridor lighting dimmed to simulate planetary darkness, and the ambient noise of the ship's systems provided perfect cover for what she had planned. The energy disruptions had been growing stronger, just as Dr. Vex had detected, but what the scientist did not realize was that Maria was not unconsciously generating those disruptions, she was consciously suppressing them. The power that had brought her back from death was vast and chaotic, barely contained within the boundaries of her physical form. Every moment of apparent calm was actually an exercise in fierce concentration, holding back forces that wanted to remake reality according to rules she did not understand. She stopped holding back. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Every piece of electronic equipment on the detention level overloaded simultaneously. Emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the corridor into absolute darkness. The transparent aluminum walls of her cell cracked with crystalline sounds like breaking bells, and the air itself seemed to burn with invisible fire. The 2 guards on duty stumbled backward, their night vision useless in the supernatural darkness that had fallen over their section. They fumbled for emergency communicators, but the devices produced only static and interference. Maria walked through the fractured wall of her cell as if it were made of smoke. The barrier that had contained her for 6 days simply ceased to exist where she touched it, molecules forgetting their bonds and drifting apart like morning mist. "Evening, boys," she said cheerfully to the terrified guards. "Mind if I stretch my legs for a bit?" One guard managed to activate his weapon, a plasma rifle that should have reduced any target to component atoms. The beam struck Maria's center mass and simply vanished, absorbed into the impossible energy field that surrounded her like armor made of controlled chaos. "That was rude," she said, and gestured casually in his direction. The guard's rifle began aging rapidly, decades of wear and corrosion compressed into seconds. The metal corroded, the energy cells leaked their charge, and the weapon crumbled to dust in his hands. He stared at his empty palms for a moment, then fainted. The second guard was already running. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship as emergency systems detected the massive energy surge on the detention level. Maria walked calmly through corridors that bent and twisted around her passage, the ship's geometry becoming fluid under the influence of forces that operated outside normal physics. She was not trying to escape. She was not trying to damage the ship or harm the crew. She was simply demonstrating what Dr. Vex had suspected but never dared voice, that the power which had resurrected her was growing stronger, learning to manipulate the fundamental forces that held reality together. Security teams converged on her position from 3 directions, heavily armed and trained for combat against any conceivable threat. They found her in the main corridor, standing beneath a light fixture that pulsed with colors that had no names, waiting patiently for their arrival. "Gentlemen," she said with a polite nod, "I believe you are looking for me." The team leader raised his weapon, then hesitated. His training said to fire immediately, but his instincts screamed that conventional weapons would be useless against whatever she had become. The moment of hesitation cost him the initiative. "I want to make something clear," Maria continued conversationally. "I am not your enemy. I have no interest in harming any of you or damaging your ship. I am simply a United States Marine who refuses to stay dead. But if you keep trying to kill me, I am going to start taking it personally." The corridor around her shimmered like a heat mirage. The metal walls began to show stress fractures that spread outward from her position like spider webs. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming difficult to breathe. "So here is what we are going to do," she said. "You are going to escort me back to my cell. You are going to repair the walls you built to contain me, and you are going to stop pretending that you understand what you are dealing with. In return, I will continue to be polite, cooperative, and generally pleasant company." "And if we refuse?" the team leader managed to ask. Maria's smile was gentle, but her eyes held depths that reflected something vast and terrible. "Then you will learn why humans are the only species that ever domesticated wolves. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is mistake kindness for weakness." The security team escorted her back to detention without firing a shot. By morning, the story had spread to every deck of the ship. The human who walked through walls, the prisoner who made weapons turn to dust, the creature that spoke of wolves as if they were pets. Dr. Vex found Commander Thorne in his ready room 6 hours later, staring at damage reports that defied rational explanation. The detention level would require complete reconstruction. The security teams were reporting symptoms consistent with exposure to unknown energy fields. Most disturbing of all, 3 crew members had requested to be transferred to other assignments specifically to avoid any future contact with the human prisoner. "She could have escaped," Thorne said without looking up. She could have killed every guard on that level. Instead, she made a demonstration and returned voluntarily to custody. Yes, sir. Why? Dr. Vex considered the question carefully. I believe she is teaching us something, Commander, about power, about restraint, about the consequences of underestimating her species. Thorn finally looked up from his reports. And what lesson are we supposed to learn? That when humans say they don't know when to quit, Dr. Vex replied, they are not boasting, they are issuing a warning. The myth becomes reality. News traveled faster than light in the Galactic Empire, carried by quantum communications arrays that linked every ship, every outpost, every conquered world in an instantaneous network of information. What happened aboard Commander Thorn's vessel should have remained classified, buried under layers of military secrecy and official denial. But secrets had a way of escaping, especially when they involved something as fundamentally disturbing as a human who refused to stay dead. The story spread through the fleet like a virus. Maintenance crews whispered about it in engineering bays. Junior officers passed it along during duty shifts. Communication specialists found excuses to contact other ships just to share the tale of the impossible human prisoner. With each telling, the details grew more extraordinary. Maria Santos became a figure of legend, her abilities magnified and mythologized until she seemed less like a captured soldier and more like a force of nature wearing human skin, the creature that walked through walls, the ghost that laughed at death, the harbinger of humanity's hidden power. Supreme Commander Zareth received the first official reports while reviewing invasion plans for Earth in his private chambers aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. The massive dreadnought served as mobile headquarters for the Empire's military operations, a floating palace of technology and political power that commanded respect throughout 43 star systems. Zareth was ancient even by Draknari standards, his obsidian skin marked with the ceremonial scars of countless victories. He had personally overseen the conquest of 17 species, turning diverse civilizations into uniform components of the Empire's vast machine. The reports from Thorn's ship should have been routine intelligence about a new enemy's capabilities. Instead, they described something that challenged every assumption about the nature of power itself. Resurrection, he said aloud, tasting the word like poison. A human female who returns from confirmed death, demonstrating abilities that exceed our understanding of physical law. His aide, a younger officer named Kethvar, shifted nervously beside the command throne. Sir, the reports may be exaggerated. Fear and superstition often distort battlefield accounts. Perhaps, but 3 separate ships have now reported similar phenomena. Energy disruptions around human prisoners, equipment failures, crew members experiencing psychological effects that our medical staff cannot explain. Zareth stood and moved to the chamber's vast observation window. Beyond the reinforced crystal, the invasion fleet stretched to the horizon, thousands of ships prepared to descend upon Earth like an unstoppable tide. The sight should have filled him with satisfaction. Instead, he felt the cold touch of doubt. Order a communication link to Commander Thorn's vessel, he commanded. I will speak with this impossible human myself. The quantum communicator established connection within moments, creating a real-time holographic link between the flagship and the distant prison ship. Maria Santos appeared in the center of Zareth's chamber, her image projected with perfect clarity despite the vast distance separating them. She looked smaller than he had expected, more ordinary. A simple human female in the standard gray garments of a prisoner, sitting casually on the edge of a detention cell bench. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled, her uniform rumpled from days of captivity, but her eyes held a defiant spark that reminded him uncomfortably of predators he had faced in his youth. Well, Maria said, looking around at the luxurious chamber with obvious interest. This is definitely an upgrade from my usual accommodations. I don't suppose this is the part where you offer me a drink and we discuss terms for my release? Zareth stepped into the projection field, his massive frame towering over her holographic image. I am Supreme Commander Zareth, Lord of the Eternal Fleet, Conqueror of Worlds. You will address me with proper respect. I'm Sergeant Maria Santos, United States Marine Corps, and I'll address you however I damn well please, she replied cheerfully. Nice ship, by the way, very shiny, probably compensating for something. The casual disrespect hit Zareth like a physical blow. For centuries, lesser beings had prostrated themselves before his presence, trembling at the very mention of his name. This human spoke to him as if he were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle in her day. You will explain how your species achieves resurrection, he demanded. You will provide detailed intelligence about Earth's defensive capabilities. You will submit to the Empire's authority. Maria laughed, a sound that somehow managed to echo strangely in the cavernous chamber despite being only a holographic projection. You know what? I've got a better idea. How about you turn your pretty little fleet around and go find someone else to bully? Trust me when I say that invading Earth is going to be the last mistake your empire ever makes. Threats from a single prisoner carry no weight. Who said anything about threats? I'm giving you friendly advice. See, the thing about humans is that we have this really annoying habit of surviving things that should kill us. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, alien invasions. We just keep getting back up and fighting harder. Zareth gestured to Kethvar, who activated additional recording systems. Every word of this conversation would be analyzed by intelligence specialists and tactical planners. Your individual resilience is irrelevant. The Empire commands forces that could sterilize your planet's surface. Probably, Maria agreed. But then what? You glass Earth, kill billions of humans, declare victory, and move on to the next target. Except... She stood and moved closer to the projection pickup, her image growing larger and more imposing. Except some of us won't stay dead, and we'll remember what you did to our home. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Emergency lighting flickered as energy patterns disrupted the ship's systems from halfway across the galaxy. Kethvar stepped backward involuntarily, his frills flattening against his neck in instinctive terror. You see, Maria continued, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated strangely in the enclosed space. Humans have been dealing with bullies for our entire history. We've learned some useful techniques for handling creatures who think might makes right. Your primitive world cannot stand against the combined might of 43 civilizations. 43 civilizations that you conquered by making them afraid. But what happens when fear stops working? What happens when your enemies start coming back from the dead, angrier than before and completely beyond your ability to control? Zareth felt something he had not experienced in centuries, genuine uncertainty. The human's words carried weight beyond mere boasting. Her very presence in the communication field was causing measurable disruptions to his ship's systems, effects that his best scientists could not explain or predict. End transmission, he ordered. The holographic image dissolved, leaving him alone with his aide and the growing realization that the Empire had discovered something far more dangerous than another primitive species to conquer. They had found humanity. Sir, Kethvar said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider the invasion timeline, gather more intelligence, develop countermeasures for these unusual abilities. No, Zareth replied, but his voice carried less certainty than usual. The fleet will proceed as planned, but increase security protocols if other human prisoners begin manifesting similar capabilities. He did not finish the sentence. Throughout the vast invasion fleet, similar conversations were taking place as word of the impossible humans spread from ship to ship. Crew members who had never questioned orders began asking uncomfortable questions. Officers who had planned the Earth invasion with confident efficiency suddenly found themselves considering scenarios they had never imagined. On her distant prison ship, Maria Santos sat in her repaired cell and smiled. She could feel the doubt spreading through the fleet like ripples on a pond, each conversation weakening the Empire's absolute confidence in its own superiority. The Draknari had built their power on the fear and submission of conquered peoples, but fear was a double-edged weapon, and humans had always been very good at turning their enemies' strengths against them. She closed her eyes and concentrated, feeling the strange energy that had brought her back from death stirring in response to her will. Somewhere out there, Earth waited in ignorant peace, unaware of the vast fleet approaching with hostile intent. Her planet needed time to prepare, time to organize, time to show these alien conquerors exactly what happened when someone threatened humanity's home. The next time they killed her, she decided, it was going to be very public indeed. The Empire wanted to use fear as a weapon? She would show them what real terror looked like. After all, there was nothing more frightening than an enemy who simply refused to lose. Revolution in the Stars. The execution was broadcast live across the entire Draknari fleet. Supreme Commander Zareth had decided that the myth of the undying human needed to be destroyed publicly, dramatically, and permanently. Every ship in the invasion force received the transmission. Every crew member was ordered to witness the final termination of the impossible prisoner. Maria Santos stood in the center of the flagship's grand arena, a vast amphitheater designed for imperial ceremonies and public demonstrations of power. Thousands of Draknari officers filled the tiered seating, their amber eyes reflecting the harsh spotlights that bathed the execution platform in brilliant white radiance. She had been transported to the Eternal Dominion under maximum security, accompanied by enough guards to conquer a small planet. The Empire was taking no chances with their prize prisoner, the human who had single-handedly undermined the confidence of their entire military machine. "Citizens of the Empire," Zareth announced, his voice carried by communication arrays to every corner of the fleet. "You have heard impossible stories about this human female. Tales of resurrection, of supernatural powers, of abilities that defy natural law. Today, we end these myths forever." Maria looked around the arena with interest, taking in the elaborate architecture and the sea of hostile faces. She had requested permission to make a final statement, a courtesy traditionally granted to condemned prisoners. Zareth had agreed, confident that her last words would be quickly forgotten once she was permanently dead. "Hello, everyone," she said, her voice amplified throughout the arena and across the fleet. "I'm Sergeant Maria Santos, and I represent the people of Earth. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to address your empire." A ripple of confusion passed through the assembled crowd. Condemned prisoners were supposed to beg for mercy or proclaim their innocence, not deliver what sounded like a diplomatic speech. "I know many of you have heard stories about humans," Maria continued, "about our supposed ability to return from death, to defy your weapons and your science. I want to set the record straight about those stories." She paused, letting the silence build tension throughout the vast chamber. "They are absolutely true." The arena erupted in nervous chatter. Zareth raised a hand for silence, his expression darkening with anger. This was not how the execution was supposed to proceed. "But that's not the important part," Maria said once quiet returned. "The important part is why we can do these things. It's not magic, it's not advanced technology, it's not genetic superiority. It's something much simpler and much more dangerous to empires like yours." The spotlights dimmed slightly as energy patterns began building around her, visible as faint distortions in the air that made the watching crowd shift uneasily in their seats. "We refuse to accept that might makes right. We refuse to believe that superior firepower gives you the moral authority to conquer other species, and we absolutely refuse to stay down when bullies try to keep us there." The execution device descended from the arena's ceiling, a massive construct of alien technology designed to completely disintegrate any target at the molecular level. No known force could survive its activation. No species had ever demonstrated resistance to its effects. "You see," Maria said, seemingly unaware of the weapon positioning itself above her. "Humans have a saying, live free or die. Most species interpret that as a choice between freedom and death. Humans interpret it as instructions." Zareth activated the device personally, his clawed hand stabbing down on the control with savage satisfaction. The air above Maria erupted in contained nuclear fire, energies that could have vaporized a city block focused into a beam barely wider than her shoulders. The light was so intense that protective filters automatically engaged throughout the arena, saving thousands of retinas from permanent damage. When the glare faded and the smoking air cleared, nothing remained of the execution platform except a crater filled with molten metal. The crowd sat in stunned silence, waiting for confirmation that the impossible human was finally, permanently dead. 40 minutes later, Maria walked onto the arena floor through the main entrance, her prison garments slightly singed, but otherwise undamaged. The silence that greeted her appearance was absolute, the kind of quiet that came from thousands of minds simultaneously struggling to process something that violated their understanding of reality. "As I was saying," she continued conversationally, "humans don't really do the whole staying dead thing very well. It's one of our more annoying traits." The pandemonium was immediate and absolute. Officers leaped to their feet, shouting orders that no one could hear over the general chaos. Security teams rushed toward the arena floor, weapons drawn but hands shaking. Emergency alarms blared as crews throughout the fleet reacted to what they had just witnessed. But Maria was not finished. "I want you all to understand something very important," she said, her voice somehow cutting through the noise to reach every ear in the arena. "What you just saw is not special. Every human can do this, all 8 billion of us. Your invasion fleet is planning to attack a world populated by creatures who literally cannot be permanently killed." The energy distortions around her grew stronger, visible now as waves of impossible force that bent light and warped space itself. The arena's structure began to groan under stresses that its designers had never anticipated. More than that, she continued, we remember everything, every death, every injury, every moment of pain you inflict on us. And when we come back, we're not grateful for the experience. A section of the arena's upper tiers simply ceased to exist, the molecular bonds holding the metal together suddenly forgetting their purpose. Debris that should have fallen instead drifted upward, defying gravity as if the very concept of down had become negotiable. So here's what's going to happen, Maria announced to the terrified crowd. You're going to turn this fleet around and go home. You're going to tell everyone in your empire that Earth is off limits. The price of defiance. 6 months after the revolution in the stars, Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of the human vessel Indomitable, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport as they approached humanity's home system. The blue and white marble that had given birth to her species looked exactly as she remembered it, unchanged by the galactic upheaval that had reshaped dozens of civilizations. But Maria herself was different now. The power that had brought her back from death had evolved, grown more stable but also more alien. She could feel it moving beneath her skin like a living thing, patient and vast and utterly devoted to the simple principle that humans did not quit. Behind her, the former Dr. Vex worked at a portable laboratory station, his scientific instruments focused on readings that still defied conventional understanding. He had chosen to remain with the humans after the Empire's collapse, driven by curiosity about the species that had accomplished the impossible. The energy patterns are stabilizing, he reported, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who had finally begun to understand a puzzle that had tormented him for months. Your resurrection ability appears to be entering a dormant phase. Good, Maria replied without turning from the viewport. I was getting tired of accidentally warping reality every time I got emotional. Engineer Kala looked up from the communications array where she had been monitoring transmissions from across the former empire. Her blue scales had taken on a healthier hue since gaining her freedom, and her movements carried a confidence that had been absent during her years of servitude. The Confederation Council has approved Earth's membership application, she announced. Your planet will have full voting rights and defensive protection from the moment you make contact with your government. Assuming they believe us, Maria said with a wry smile, showing up with a fleet of alien refugees and claiming to have accidentally started a galactic revolution is going to be a hard sell, even for Marines. The ship's captain, a former Draknari officer named Theknor who had joined the rebellion early, approached the observation deck with the measured steps of someone still adjusting to serving with former enemies. His species' rigid military tradition made the concept of informal cooperation difficult to accept, but he was learning. We are receiving a transmission from Earth Defense Command, he reported. They are curious about our intentions. Can't imagine why, Maria said dryly. Put them through. The main display activated, showing the face of a human admiral whose expression suggested he was having the strangest day of a very long career. Behind him, Maria could see the controlled chaos of a command center dealing with an unprecedented situation. This is Admiral Richardson of Earth Defense Command. You are flying an unidentified alien vessel accompanied by what appears to be a significant fleet. State your intentions immediately. Admiral Richardson, Maria said, stepping into view of the pickup. I'm Sergeant Maria Santos, United States Marine Corps, serial number 2847-6639-1142. I've been missing for about 7 months and I have some very interesting stories to tell. The Admiral's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on professional skepticism. Sergeant Santos was declared killed in action after her patrol disappeared in the outer system. You'll forgive me if I require more than your word to accept this claim. Understood, sir. I suggest you contact General Harrison at Marine Corps Intelligence. Tell him his favorite troublemaker is back and she brought friends. 20 minutes later, after a quantum-encrypted communication with Earth's military leadership, Admiral Richardson's skepticism had been replaced by barely controlled amazement. The woman on his screen was definitely Sergeant Maria Santos, down to biometric markers that could not be faked and classified information that only she could have known. So you're telling me, the Admiral said slowly, that you single-handedly destroyed a galactic empire that was planning to invade Earth? Not destroyed, Maria corrected. Reformed. The Empire's member species chose freedom over conquest once they realized it was possible. Most of the former Imperial fleet is now part of a defensive confederation dedicated to protecting developing civilizations from external threats. And you accomplished this by... Maria exchanged glances with her alien companions. How did you explain to someone that humanity possessed the ability to resurrect from death through sheer stubbornness? How did you describe power that operated on principles the universe was still learning to accommodate? By being human, sir. Apparently, that's more dangerous than anyone realized. The debriefing that followed lasted 3 days. Maria sat in comfortable chairs in Pentagon conference rooms, surrounded by generals and scientists and intelligence analysts, all of them struggling to process information that challenged every assumption about humanity's place in the universe. The technical explanations came from Vex, whose scientific analysis had finally identified the source of human resurrection ability. It was not technology or genetics or supernatural intervention. It was something far more fundamentally disturbing to established order. Human consciousness, he explained to a room full of people with very high security clearances, operates on quantum principles that most species never develop. Your neural patterns exist partially outside normal spacetime, anchored to your physical forms but not entirely dependent on them. In layman's terms, asked General Harrison, humans are naturally quantum entangled with their own existence. When the physical form dies, the consciousness pattern persists in quantum foam until it can reconstruct the necessary biological matrix. The stronger the individual's determination to survive, the more efficiently this process operates. So we're all potentially immortal? Asked Dr. Chen from the CDC. Not immortal, Vex corrected. Persistent. There appears to be a finite limit to how many times the process can occur, and the energy requirements increase exponentially with each resurrection. Most humans would likely exhaust their quantum coherence after 3 or 4 deaths. Most humans, General Harrison repeated, looking at Maria. But not Sergeant Santos. Sergeant Santos possesses unusually strong quantum coherence, Vex confirmed. Her consciousness pattern shows no signs of degradation even after multiple death resurrection cycles. She could theoretically continue the process indefinitely. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had just learned that death was negotiable, that their species possessed abilities that had toppled a galactic empire, and that one of their own had somehow become a living example of everything that made humans dangerous to the established order of the universe. There's something else, Maria said into the silence. The other species in the Confederation want to establish an embassy on Earth. They're hoping to learn from us, to understand how we develop these abilities. Learn what exactly? Asked the Secretary of Defense. Maria stood and walked to the conference room's window, looking out at the city beyond. Millions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their species had just been revealed as one of the most potentially powerful forces in the galaxy. How to be free, she said simply. The Confederation species spent so long under Imperial rule that they forgot what it meant to make their own choices. They want to remember, and they think humans can teach them. Can we? Maria smiled, remembering the look in Engineer Kala's eyes when she first realized that resistance was possible. The moment when Dr. Vex chose curiosity over obedience, the day when thousands of beings decided that freedom was worth fighting for. We can try. After all, teaching people to be free is what humans do best. The meeting adjourned with plans for first contact protocols, diplomatic exchanges, and cultural programs that would reshape Earth's place in the galaxy. But Maria remained behind, staring out at the world she had never expected to see again. General Harrison approached her as the room emptied. How are you holding up, Marine? This has been a lot to process. I'm fine, sir, but I keep thinking about something Zareth said during the revolution. He told me this wasn't over. Do you think he was right? Maria watched a passenger aircraft climb into the afternoon sky, carrying people to destinations they had chosen freely. Below them, traffic moved in patterns determined by individual decisions rather than imperial decree. The entire planet hummed with the chaotic energy of 8 billion humans pursuing their own dreams and ambitions. Maybe, she said. But if it's not over, then whatever comes next is going to find out what happens when you threaten a species that refuses to stay down. And I really don't think they're going to like the answer. Outside the window, Earth turned toward night, carrying its cargo of impossible humans into an uncertain but ultimately hopeful future. The galaxy had learned that humanity was dangerous not because of their technology or their numbers, but because of something much more fundamental. They had learned that humans simply would not quit. And in a universe where might had made right for millennia, that made them the most terrifying force imaginable.